Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, depends on where you're joining me from. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I am a trainer here at Redtail Technology. And today we're actually talking about, as weird as it sounds, one of my favorite topics, and that is actually templates. So templates are just one of those items that they kind of get forgotten about. I know that sounds weird, but so many offices that I've worked with on my one-on-ones, or even when once upon a time I could travel, templates were this untouched, weird Pandora's box kind of feature that a lot of people didn't utilize. And I know sometimes that comes from a misunderstanding. Sometimes it comes from just hey, I don't know where to begin. So we're going to talk about all of those different templates today. Now, I will warn you, we won't have a lot of time to really build a lot of those templates because a lot of them require time, which is always the thing that we're short on. But if you always have questions, you can always reach out to us or support. But let's dive into really those kind of big questions we tend to get when it comes to templates first. So the first question, and it's really a no-brainer here, but what is a template? A template in itself, it's a preset format used so that format does not have to be recreated each time it is used. Now, kind of one little big word that always stands out to me there is that concept of recreated. Again, templates are used so that way you build it once, you use it many. Templates should also be your starting points, and I'll stress that again when we actually hop into the CRM and go through a couple of those. But again, the whole purpose of a template is to create that concept and for us to really make it easier and drive us forward. So that ties in perfectly with this second question. Why should I use templates? I know some people are probably sitting there, that's an obvious question, that's an obvious answer. Well, the first is always to create that consistency. Templates are there to help us make things easier with that whole efficiency. You're going to see when I build an activity template, it's very fast. But if we have a lot of new hires right now, or if we've had a database that's just kind of messy and we're all over the place, I label it as one thing and someone else labels it as another thing. The very first thing that templates really solve is to get everyone on board with that same exact concept. Now, we also have this concept of adding value. So again, we have processes that we want to make sure we streamline. We have these ideas that is going to make it easier on us, and it adds that value of actually getting those really good details out of the situation. Now, the last one, again, pretty obvious, but organization. Again, if we were all scattered about, if we rein it all in with these templates, we now have that organization that we're seeking. So templates are very profound. They're very easy to set up. You'll see when we go through them. But the really big thing I always like to point out, you avoid having to recreate the same concepts over and over again, and you're going to start to see your life get a little bit easier. Who doesn't love that, right? Now, the last two questions here that we have, probably get these at least once every single day. It never fails. But who can build a template? I know there's kind of this, again, misunderstanding that it has to be an admin in the function or has to be the database owner, which actually is not true. Anyone that's part of that database can build out those templates. So maybe I have someone who has just a little bit more time on their hands and they're the ones who can really spearhead that project. They technically can. Again, admin rights do not make a difference when it comes to templates. And then the same concept, well, then who can use them? Is it one of those situations where I build them and only I have access to it? The answer is no, actually. If I build it, everyone that's part of my same database can use that same template. So it really can make it easier for having like a template team or one template builder really benefit the whole office. Now I'm going to go through this, and I won't go through it as many times as I did through the whole training series, but the one thing to remember is, how do I get there? How do I really create these templates? I get the concept, Catherine, but where do I start? And like many things, it's actually going to start by clicking your name in the top right-hand corner and then coming down to manage your account. Now, once you've opened manage your account, it's going to redirect you and you're going to see a page that looks a little similar to this one here, where we have preferences, email, then you're going to see a whole section just for managing templates. Now, the types of templates that we have is for activity, automation, custom export, email, mail merging, note, and workflows. I won't necessarily go in this order because this order is in alphabetical order. However, you're going to find that some of them go hand in hand a little bit easier than, say, something like an email template and an automation. It's a little bit different. So you're going to see when I go through them, there's kind of sibling templates that work together very well. But again, I'm going to stress this because I get this frequently. Anyone, despite admin rights, can build out templates. So there's nothing preventing you from starting it today. Now, I have a slide, but I'm going to kind of slip over to the CRM here, and I'm actually going to dive into really all of those different templates, and then I'll kind of give you a really helpful site, or I should say a help desk article that'll help kind of make things easier on you. So again, we're going to start by clicking our name in the top right-hand corner, and then coming on down to manage your account. Now, once we're here, again, manage templates, it's going to be actually perfectly in the center of the page here. And I'm actually going to start off with activity templates at the top here. So when I come in here, I already have some that are pre-built out. If you've never built them out before, you're seeing a nice blank page here, and that's not a bad thing. Again, it's just you haven't taken that time yet. But when you click on this new option here at the top, you're going to see it looks very similar to those activities that we do on a daily basis. So again, think about those things that you do on repetition and you find yourself saying, I am so sick of clicking these same buttons over and over and over again. That's where activity templates come in. So the first one I always like to give example for is a client review. Now you don't have to make it as specific as client review. It can be just client meeting. But again, the whole purpose is we know we meet with our clients, and that's something we do frequently. Build this as a template so that way it pre-fills your subject, your type, your category. You can even pre-fill your description if you have a whole kind of laundry list of things you like to remember. You can even set your attendees as well. So if you are one of those smaller offices where you really only have one advisor, but you're more of the admin and you book on their behalf, you can actually preset that advisor so you don't have to worry about that activity pre-filling with your name instead. But again, if you have things where it may be multiple advisors and there are situations where multiple occur at the same time, you can always have those multi situations. So as you can see, I picked 4 attendees. I could select all if I really needed to, or again, I can leave it blank so I can always choose the right advisor later on. Now again, I can just update that. I'm going to go ahead and cancel because I didn't make any changes. But client reviews, client meetings, those aren't the only things we do on a daily basis. We might have things like follow-up phone call. Again, that's something where we miss a phone call and we have to give them a call back, or at least I hope we're giving them a call back. And from here, we can have the subject again pre-fill, the types and categories in our descriptions, and it even actually filled in with my name specifically for here. Now, one thing I do want to point out though really quick is this types and category list. Both of these are completely customizable. This is one aspect that you do have to be an admin to make these changes. But if you're looking at my list going, whoa, why is that so long? Why is hers completely different than mine? That is, again, where you're going to want to make those changes under that managed database list and incorporate those different things that you do on a daily basis. So if you do want to separate client review, maybe you want to separate prospecting meeting out as well. That's another situation you can use. Maybe you want to use certain categories because again, you only start off with some very broad examples, but maybe if you want to get more specific for money movement or onboarding or tying back into that prospecting concept, this list is entirely up to you. These are the only 2 things that are part of an activity though that do require that admin access first. Now, again, these aren't the only examples. You might find yourself saying, well, I do a lot of tasks and I just want to block off my schedule. You can always have kind of just a time block. So it removes that availability in the time and you can use that to, again, work on projects, or maybe you're just trying to save that time. It's kind of like a pending confirmation situation. You can even use that kind of an activity template. So use these to your advantage. Find those activities that you feel like you do all the time. And right now you feel like you're just coming over here living in Groundhog Day, picking the same things over and over. That's again where activity templates can come and relieve some of that pain that you might be experiencing. Now, I do want to say you can click the back arrow here and it's going to bring you back to this manage template section. But just to recap again, you're going to click your name in the top right and manage your account. And that's how you'll get back to these templates. All of them live back here. Now, I did say I won't go in order, and this one is a perfect example. I'm actually going to hop down all the way to note templates. So note templates, again, they tend to go hand in hand with activity templates. Now, I do want to kind of take a side departure for just a second. Activities are for everything that's in the future. So if that meeting is, for tomorrow at noon, or if I have a task I need to get done by next Thursday, or actually no, next Wednesday, I can put that in again as an activity. That's all those future. Notes are for everything in the past. So think about those discussions, those recommendations we've had with those clients. We want to make sure we cover, our own assets here in this situation. We don't want anything to come back and bite us. That's where we can even come in with note templates. Now, unlike activity templates where it's really pre-filling all of these categories, all these drop downs, note templates rely a lot on a body of note itself. So an example I always like to give, it's very basic, but I'm sure I have a couple admins out there who are like, oh, preach, I got this, I understand perfectly. If you feel like you type the same sentence over and over throughout a day, kind of coming back again to that activity concept, put this in as a note template. You're not reinventing the sentence. All you're doing here is pre-filling this template here. So we have a body that just says, called and confirmed that the appointment is still on. If that's something you do, and again, that's something you do frequently, use that as a note template. You're not limited on how many you can have back here. So if that's, again, something that's really important and you feel like that could just save you so much time and sanity, put that in as a note template. On the reverse, if we have kind of those situations where we have questions we always ask ourselves, but it never fails. When we go to actually put those notes in, we forget about answering question 4, or we completely forgot about question 2. And then we realize after we've added the noted, oh, dang it, I forgot about this. Then you have to go back in and do it again type of thing. If you have something like this that prompts you to answer those questions, then it really is more of just a fill in the blank type of answer. So again, this might guide you more for those consistencies. And again, it might help you for just those days where like, if my head wasn't attached, I'd lose it. So use that note template as more of a fill in the blank form. Now you can also do one that's again a little bit shorter, but it prompts you again for kind of an answer. So this one we have for money movement. We have the amount, deadline, method. And again, this is just to help us record it and make it more straightforward. So we have, again, more of that same formatting coming into play. So we're not sitting here going, well, Jim answers in this one as this way, which has a whole novel attached to it, versus when, Jack puts it in, it's straightforward and it's only 4 lines. Again, it just kind of creates it so that way it's the same version with all of the correct answers we're still looking for. That's where note templates, again, are going to come in and help you. Now I'm going to kind of deviate a little. Again, activity and note templates, kind of the same coin, reverse sides. The next one I'm actually going to talk about is automation templates. Now, automation templates, the whole purpose of these are if something happens, something else happens in exchange. So for example, if I'm adding in that client review activity, I've got that schedule coming up. I've got my client, I'm scheduling them out for, December 16th. This meeting itself exists, but what if I have a workflow out there that actually makes sure that I actually do everything I'm supposed to be doing for that meeting in itself? This is where automations can connect those two. So this very top one here, we have a client review workflow. All that it's saying here is that if I add in that activity, that actual client review meeting, well, what do I want it to do? I want it to link that workflow. Now, where I see automations go kind of horribly wrong when I start to get those phone calls and they're panicked going, Catherine, I've got 700 workflows and they're not actually accurate. Where are they coming from? It's usually because we're not using conditions. So if I didn't do anything else, if I literally just filled in these 2 tabs, what this is saying is that anytime I add any activity, whether it has to deal with client reviews or not, it's going to trigger this workflow. So just picture for a hot minute how many activities we add in a day, times that by how many workflows you would get. So again, probably imagining that nightmare. Avoid that with conditions. So an if all condition, that's where we're going to make it very specific. If it can only apply in this particular scenario, that is where an if all comes in. So in this one, it's only when we have that type of client review. Now I could get even more specific if I really wanted. I can say, hey, not only when it's a certain type, but also when it's a certain category. That's where it's making it extremely important. And that's where activity templates make it even more important to make this accurate. Because if I don't pick that particular type and category, that workflow will not trigger in the background, and I just have this floating activity and this floating workflow completely separated. So when I use a template here, again, there's that type I need, there's that category. This ensures that this automation will work, therein linking that workflow. So that's how they all kind of start to tie in together. It makes everything more of a process. Now, that's of course not the only automation. You could also do one for, as dreary as the topic this is, a status change, specifically for when someone becomes an inactive, so they're no longer our client, or if they pass away. So this one's actually based on a status change. Now, I did want to do a different example because I know, again, there's this misunderstanding where workflows are the only thing with an automation. And actually, we can also notify as well. So I know some of us are still working from home. We're all scattered about. So communication tends to go with that. We kind of get lost in the dark. This can kind of bring us back into that light here. So we have this contact status change. I wanted to email my entire staff. And again, this is where I want to use those conditions. I don't want to get an email notification every single time there's a status change. I only want it when they're either inactive or deceased. So this is one where I would not use an if all because I have two different options. That is where I want to do an if any. So an if any here says, hey, if the status is equal to deceased, trigger that notification. If the status is equal to inactive, you could also trigger that notification. So it's at least one of those situations has to occur for this automation to occur. So again, just another example, but again, I know there's always this misconception that it's always based off an activity and it's always a workflow. And it's not true. You can get really creative. You can come in with a contact added for maybe a prospecting status change from a prospect to a client, maybe have more of an onboarding. Maybe you have other activity actually out there that might trigger those workflows. You can get really creative, but the whole point of this here is to make it easier on you so you don't have as many clicks to launch everything that you have to do. Now, similar to how activities and notes go hand in hand, I will say automations and workflows also tend to go hand in hand. So again, I'm just going to come back to the manager account and I'm going to go back down to workflow templates this time. So at the very bottom here, and again, similar to what I said earlier, if you don't have any in here, it's not a bad thing, just haven't taken that time. And again, I'll show you some samples later on. But a workflow in itself is just a process that you work through. Now, this probably is the most requested training that we get is how do I build a workflow? What is a workflow? Where do I even begin? And you always want to begin back here with workflow templates because again, those templates, the whole purpose is so you don't have to recreate it every time. And chances are high, the process for a client review meeting, this important information, which I'll show you, it's pretty straightforward. There might be some deviations per contact, but the general concept is the same. Now, where the misconception comes in for workflow templates is that it always has to be complicated. And that's where a lot of that whole, I'm never going to touch workflows, it just won't work for me, it's too complicated. It doesn't have to be actually. Now, this one here, this important information, I always like to show this because it's very basic. It's just a one-step workflow, has a couple different tasks, and that's it. There's not even outcomes. It just gives me a week, or I should say one business week, to get everything in here, and that's all it's asking me for. So you don't have to make workflows, you know, shoot for the moon here and hopefully we'll get there. That's not what it's saying here. What it's saying is to make sure that you have everything you're actually looking for and you're not letting those things fall through the cracks. So something as basic as this one, or it could get more complicated, like a client review workflow here, where it revolves around a meeting. We have some preparation that goes into it. We have the day of as well, and then we have a follow-up. That is another example of a workflow, but again, it does not require it to always look like this, where there's multi-steps, there's outcomes, there's everything under the sun you can think of, not always required. Again, it's going to be office-based, and it's going to be really user-specific, actually. But use those workflows to, again, avoid having those things get lost in communication, fall through the cracks, and then again, we're sitting here going, well, maybe next time. Avoid that whole concept. Be prepared for the next time with workflows. Now, again, I'm just going to come back to manage your account. You'll kind of get into this rhythm here. And again, we've already talked about activity automation, notes, and workflows. I'm kind of sandwiched in so far. Now, email templates and mail merge, those also tend to be going hand in hand, but they're actually the reverse of each other. So email templates, this again is more for the digital realm here. But what I always love about email templates is that it creates that consistency to say, hey, if I'm missing those things, what's something I can easily find? So if I do a search and I find out, hey, I'm missing the tax IDs for these 5 active clients, why is that the case? Or I'm missing an address for this person. Not sure how that happened, but it needs to be replaced, of course. I can pop off something like this where it's saying, oh, looks like we're missing something. Again, the actual format's still the same. I can just come over here, and when it's actually going to a contact, fill in what's actually missing. Now, my personal favorite is actually using those mail merge fields, so that way we can make it more personalized. I mean, how many times do we get mail in our mail here, and it's always addressed to, dear valued customer, or they call you something that if you go by maybe a nickname and it's addressing it as the full name, and you sit there go, they don't know me. This is where you can come in here and make it more personalized. So you can use those mail merge fields. All it requires is those little pound signs or hashtags, however you look at them. 2 of them in the front, 2 in the back. And again, those mail merge fields, if you're not sure what exists, they all actually exist on our help desk. So I'm going to actually hop over there really quick. So we come to our question mark, come up to our help desk. And then if I actually just search mail merge fields, search that before clearly, do a quick search, and here it is at the top. So if, again, we're not sure how they're laid out, where it's capitalized, because again, that could make a difference. You can always just come over here, copy, paste it into the actual email template, so that way you know it's actually set up correctly. You don't have to worry about it actually glitching out on you. So again, use these. If you feel like you type something similar again over and over, I can use these email templates. Now, email templates, this is kind of one of those concepts that it's a little bit interesting, because again, activity templates can be utilized from activities here. You just pick that template. Same with notes. If I come over here to notes, I can click on that note. It's right up here at the top. Again, that's going to initiate that note. And then workflows, technically, you could start down here, but if you have that automation, you don't have to worry about doing that extra click. Now, email templates actually come into play usually with broadcast emails. Now, for that to actually come into play, you do have to come over to contacts, and maybe I have a kind of a favorites list I'm just going for right here. I'm going to highlight the 10 I have. When I come over to contact options, coming on down to bulk actions, this is where I can find that broadcast email, and then this is where I can populate that template. So when I fill it in here, this first name is going to populate with those 10 contacts I have selected, their first name here. And again, if I find that all 10 of them are missing an address, I can put that in here. If they're also missing maybe a tax ID, phone number, maybe I'm just a hot mess today. And again, I'm trying to find all of those things so I'm no longer chaotically unorganized. I can send this over and it's going to make it more personalized. So again, to get there for an email template, you do have to get some sort of context, whether that's through your favorites, through a quick list, through a tag group, through a search in itself. Maybe you started off with a tag group, or a tax ID is empty, or a category is empty, or whatever the case might be. As long as you get one contact highlighted, get over here to that bulk actions, that's when you can start to use those email templates. Now, coming back, because mail merges are actually very similar, again, just more of the reverse. This is digital. This is more snail mail. So when I come over here, again, maybe I do still send things via the mail, and I need to find out, hey, I want it to populate some of that information. This does require, though, to be built out in Microsoft Word first. So I'm actually just going to click on this first one here and pull that open in Word so you can see that. But again, it has to be built in Microsoft Word first. Now, and here again, this one's actually very similar to what I just showed for our broadcast email via the email template, where it's saying, hey, we're missing some information. Here's some of those things we have. This one here is just, hey, confirm the following contact information. We want to make sure it's accurate. So similar in those lines, but again, it's pulling the first and spouse's first name, last name, the address fields, home phone, work phone, email address. So as you can see, it's pulling quite a few of those fields. It again has to be built out in Word first. Once it's been built, you can drag and drop or add those files in here. And again, once I have something like that filled out, and again, I'm just going to run it against those favorites. I'll come back, highlight everyone, contact options, mail merges here. And I'm just going to pick that same one we had. I can even save it as a note, run that mail merge. I'll give that a second to think here. And this time though, it's going to populate some of those fields. So here we have it, John and Jessica Arnold filled in their addresses here. Here's those phone numbers. But again, anything that might be missing is going to give you those blanks. So this might also be a good time to point out, if you're missing any primary emails, primary addresses, you're going to get a blank section here. It doesn't mean they're homeless, I promise. It just means you might have something missing, which is that primary marked off. But again, custom exports and mail merges are very unique in the fact that you're not really going to come up to this quick add and you're not going to have an automation trigger it. It's going to be based off of a contact list that you find and then coming over to contact options, mail merges here, and then again, broadcast emails over here to pull those email templates. Now coming back, because there's actually one more template, if you can believe it, and it's actually the one I'm only going to talk about by himself here, and that's custom export template. Now, as much as he might look like a loner here, that is not to say it's not beneficial. This is extremely useful. But basically what a custom export template is it's a DIY report. So if you find yourself saying, my database is a mess, Catherine, don't judge me, but I need to know everything that's missing in my CRM, or I want to start getting a list of what's right in my CRM. I want to get those again to a report. This is where custom exports might be your best friend. So when I come over here to new and I click over here in this option, this is why I call it my DIY, because I'm literally picking what I want on that report. So I can always recommend first and last name. That's usually the bare minimum I'd say. But from here, this is where I literally will pick off what I find valuable. Now, one that we already have built out that I personally enjoy is this basic information. Again, it's double checking that they have both the first and last name. They have a status that's marked correctly, a tax ID, a category. And then again, I want to make sure that they have a primary email, primary phone, and a primary address. That's all I'm looking for here. And it actually looks like one more contact user defined field and a couple of keywords, but that's it. Again, I'm not necessarily looking for the whole thing. That's a database backup, but those specific items, I've checked them off here. I built out the report, I saved it, and now I can use the same report over and over and over and over again. Now, similar to our actual mail merge and our email templates though, this has to run against contacts themselves. So again, you're not going to come up to this quick add. You're actually going to come again and back over to a contacts list. So as you might have guessed, I'm going to stick with my favorites here just so we have that consistency. I'm going to highlight all of my favorites. I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to pick on contact options again. And then you're going to see custom exports almost at the bottom. And from here, you're going to get a list of all of the ones you built out. Now, I made it a little easy on myself. I put a dash at the front of mine just so it stays at the top here. And I'm going to run that custom export and it's going to go ahead and give that to me at the bottom here. So I'm going to pull that open. I'm going to give it a second for it to think about it here. And then I'm going to zoom in so you guys can all see what it kind of looks like. So we have again our first and last name. Looks like immediately here I can see I'm missing a category for Ross. I'm also missing a tax ID. Coming over again, I can see there's also primary email addresses missing for Jillian Taylor. And it looks like there's actually a couple contact user defined fields that aren't present. Again, keywords that aren't there. So again, it's just helping me show what is missing in my database so that way I can go and correct it. On the reverse, it's also giving me exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those first and last names, the category, the status, the tax ID. So again, that's why I always call it my DIY, is it gives me the actual details that I'm looking for. So again, you can use this to your advantage. Now, if you do find yourself looking at your CRM and there's a bunch of categories missing and a bunch of addresses missing and a bunch of other things missing, and you're like, I don't even know where to begin. Or if you prefer working in Excel still, I know there's a couple of us out there who just kind of like working in it. You can actually update those fields in here. And then as long as you keep column A, again, do not delete column A, you can actually reach out to our support team and ask for a secure link, and we can bulk update those fields for you. So again, if you find your categories are a hot mess, if you find your sources are the same way, you find a bunch of tax IDs that are missing, you find a bunch of phone numbers missing, again, any of those fields that we usually we've done in the past as far as imports, you can again reach out to support and they can help again get those, get you in the right direction, I should say. Now, I'm not going to save that here. I don't really need that one right anymore. But again, coming back, all of those templates exist right in the manager account section and then down over here in the manage templates. So again, you're going to find some of them tend to work a little bit easier hand in hand, but you can use any of these templates. Again, it does not matter if you are a 1-2 person office or a 65-person office. These templates are designed to make your life easier by avoiding as many clicks as possible, to again create that consistency, start building that organization, because again, we start labeling things the way we like. But again, the whole purpose of these are to make it easier. Which brings me to the last slide we have in our PowerPoint, which is use a combination of those templates to streamline your office. So I kind of hinted at this already earlier, where I said, hey, I have that client review workflow. I have a client review activity template. Well, I want that activity template based upon it getting added to trigger that workflow. That's really where that process is. So again, I pick that activity template for client review. I click save. In the background, that automation saw that that typing category was chosen. The workflow is immediately attached to that contact. I go through that whole workflow as normal. I get all of those tasks done. And then here I am at the follow-up step saying, hey, make sure you put in everything that you've discussed, which brings in that note template. Here's all of those questions we talked about in the actual meeting. Here's the responses to them. And then we complete everything. So it just builds that whole process. Same with maybe we have more of a prospecting situation. I know it might sound weird to some of us, but there are a lot of people right now who are actually onboarding a lot of clients. We're getting a lot of those lists to start trying to onboard these clients, but we can have this whole concept of a brand new prospect added into the system, having on a reverse, having an automation in the background, trigger that workflow. So again, I work through that process. Now, the last one here, I always like to point out, you can actually use a note template and then an activity template, which might sound really weird. But if, again, we have something like someone called, they left, a very lengthy voicemail, there's always that one person, where we come over here and they left a message. Maybe we started off within here, incoming phone call. They called us about, blah, 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 account ending in 543, freaking about the stocks, everything else under the sun. You can put that all in here. And then at the bottom here, we have this create a follow-up activity. And when I check this off, I can pick that template of follow-up phone call. So again, I can even use it in kind of a reverse scheme. Instead of that activity triggering everything, maybe I have it reversed. Again, maybe someone called me late at night and I wasn't available. They can leave me that voicemail. I give them a call back the next day. I set that up and I have it all organized. So again, just think about those different scenarios that you might have it. You might have a workflow template saying, hey, at this point in time, send this email, which brings in an email template. Or, hey, I've got a client event. Or maybe if you have a client event, you have a client event coming up and you need to send out those invitations, which requires the mail merge template. Again, you're going to find there's certain things that just at other times will use those templates. But again, make them so that way you can make it as easy as possible.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.